In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use RePin to undistort your media with a 3D tracked solid layer. So I've got RePin open over here, and in the project, I've got a 3D tracked solid on this scoreboard. Let's go ahead and create a RePin and see what it looks like. So I'll select the solid layer, then I'll select the tracked media from the dropdown, and then I'll click Create RePin. The stabilization of the footage here isn't great. We're going to fix our track in a minute, but you might have also noticed that the quality of the media gets better as the clip progresses. That's because the scoreboard starts off far away from the camera, and as it gets closer the quality improves. And everything still looks correct in the main composition because it's being repinned into its original place. I'll undo this repin for now, and let's improve the track on our solid layer. Now, RePin uses the corners of the layer, as we just saw, but it'll take into account a corner pin effect if the layer has one. So I'll add a corner pin effect to my solid layer. And then I'll adjust the corners to line up with the scoreboard. And I'll even add a few keyframes to make sure it stays aligned throughout the shot. Okay, let's give that a try. I'll select my layer again, make sure my media is still selected in the dropdown, and click Create RePin. That's not bad. You'll notice it cuts off here, and that's because it's the edge of the frame in our main composition, so there are no pixels to undistort. One more thing I like to do is expand my pin so that it encompasses more of the footage around it. So I'll undo the repin one last time, and we'll expand those edges. To do that, I'll select my solid layer and click Fix Pin Aspect Ratio. That'll add a visual guide, which is these two plugins here, and it replaced my corner pin effect with CC Power Pin. All three of these plugins are native to After Effects, so you don't need to install anything. So now under CC Power Pin's expansion properties, you can expand your layer however you like. If you're expanding disproportionately, you would then go into the layer settings and correct the aspect ratio by adjusting the layer's source resolution. The goal here is to make the squares in the checkerboard square and the circle in the middle a circle from the current perspective. But for this example, I'll cancel this and just set all of my expansions to 25%. With that expansion, we're going to be undistorting more of the footage, so I'll also increase the resolution of the solid in the layer settings. This resolution is what determines the resolution of our repin. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the repin, again, using the same layer. And I think these results are going to be a lot easier to work with. And the composition resolution is the same as we set our solid layer just now. Now, I expanded it quite a bit, but that gives us the ability to make this sign bigger if we wanted to. I could mask out the scoreboard and set its scale to 120%. And that scales it up in the main composition as well. Now we know our repinned scoreboard was being cut off as it left the frame. And now that we've scaled it up, the edge of the frame is actually creeping into our composition. One way to deal with this is to freeze the frame right before it starts to clip. So in the repin, I can right click on the layer, and under Time, I'll select Enable Time Remapping. And then I'll add a keyframe on the last frame where I can see the scoreboard, and then I'll delete the last keyframe. That'll hold our full frame of the scoreboard for the rest of the layer's duration. And then in the main composition, it won't clip the edge anymore. You should also trim the layer once the repin leaves the frame. Otherwise, as the corners go way off screen, you could get some unexpected distortions. Okay, so we've got our scoreboard in there, and we can add some graphics inside the repin. Now, when it comes to compositing in the main composition, we're likely going to need to separate the media from the graphics. For example, we'll want to add motion blur to the graphics, but not the media because it still has its original motion blur. And instead of creating two separate repins for the footage and graphics, we can just make a new instance of the repin using After Effects' drag and replace function. So I'll reveal the source of the repin layer, which will bring it up in the project panel. I'll duplicate the source, and then I'll name one of them footage, and one of them graphics. I'll then duplicate the repin layer in the timeline, then drag and replace the new source onto one of your layers. This method uses the least amount of project resources because it reuses the same undistorted media composition for both repins. if I did create a new RePin with the same solid layer, it's creating a whole other instance of the unstretched media, which is unnecessary. And also, if you want to delete a RePin, you can easily do that here in the project panel. Now, back in our main composition, we have our graphics and our footage. So I'll go into the graphics RePin and set the media to be a guide layer so that we only see the graphics in the main composition. And in the footage RePin, I'll delete the graphics. So now I can add effects to my graphics layer, like CC Force Motion Blur, without affecting the media. And if you really have to, you can also pre-comp your RePins to add things like pixel motion blur or grain. You can basically treat your RePins like any normal layer. And that's it. I hope this gave you some ideas on how you might use RePins in your own workflow, and you can try it for yourself at aescripts.com/RePin.